I believe that we will turn this over to Andy for his presentation. Donna and Elaine's, and hear what we have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance members, Town of Hebron. So bear with me, I'm going to go slow so everybody can understand what I'm going to say. I am going to read the first 2 pages, and then I'll go into the presentation. I'm not going to go through the whole executive summary because I'll be just repeating myself. But I want to get the message out there, and then we'll get into the slideshow. Again, thank you for joining us. Dear members of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, pertinent to Section 902C of the Town Charter, I am presenting the Town Manager's proposed budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023, totaling $37,581,123. The expenditure budget as presented, 0.23% increase, or a $1,176,644 more than the fiscal year 2021-2022's budget. The town manager has reduced the department head's request in the town government's budget by $334,717 attached. The town manager is recommending a CIP budget of $2,053,279, reflecting a general government contribution to the CIP of $649,486 with additional funding sources. This proposal supports the town needs and a commitment to maintain infrastructure and equipment. The American Rescue Plan coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds have made it possible to potentially fund many important projects. At this time, the final project list is still to be finalized by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and the approval process and the accounting procedures are being researched. The town manager is recommending the following funding allocations. Capital projects from $10,000 to $75,000, $206,796. Future reval at $40,000. Contribution to open space, the town manager is recommending $175,000. The Hebron Board of Education budget as presented is a 3.26% increase of the $393,621 for a local budget of $12,457,294. The Rand Board of Education budget has been presented at $30,416,081, or a 0.77% decrease, which includes a $522,109 CIP budget. Due to the population shift in the Hebron students attending RAM, this translates to an increase of $11,867 to Hebron, for a total levy amount of $14,347,265. This does reflect a higher increase compared to last year, as there was a credit taken against last year's. The October 2021 grand list has increased by $128,074,750, or a 6.5% increase, due mostly to revaluation. With the budget as presented, this translates to a proposed decrease in the mill rate, which is presently at 33, down to 32.40. As you review this budget, please keep in mind that this is a fluid document and numbers will change over the next couple of months. The proposed budget is based on information available today with placeholders for unknowns or estimated amounts. Please refer to the attached executive summary, which will outline the major expenditures and revenue changes and other highlight town manager's proposed budget. I'd like to take this time to thank the department heads for their cooperation in preparing the department's budgets. And I am grateful for the cooperation of the superintendents of schools and their staff for providing the education budgets in a timely fashion. Also at this time, I'd like to thank Donna from my office, along with Dory from my office and Elaine Griffin from the finance department for all the hard work and prep put into this project to get it out. We actually didn't finish the books until mid-morning this morning, so we weren't trying to delay delivery. It takes that long. And just for a precursor, we're not going to get Ram's new numbers until tomorrow. So those numbers are what the superintendent presented at the beginning of last night's meeting, but we know those numbers are going to change. The email address is hebronbudget@hebronct.com. Has to receive public comment and input. Emails received will be forwarded to the Board of Selectmen, Finance, and Education. It is important for the public participation early in the budget process. Public participation at all meetings is encouraged. All March budget meetings are planned to be held virtually. Budget information and key dates are available on the Hebron website, which is displayed there at hebron.com/hebron.com/budget-information. We're working to prepare a budget which reflects the town's needs and maintains a high level of town-provided services and educational excellence. The budget referendum vote is on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. It opens at 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Hebron Elementary School. Thank you for the opportunity to present the proposal. We look forward to another challenging but successful season. Sincerely, Andrew J. Tierney, Town Manager. Phew. Okay. So if there's no questions regarding that, we can dive right into the actual proposed PowerPoint of the budget. All right, Hebron budget fiscal year 2022-2023, Town Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance presentation March 1st. So I'm going to go through these slides, and I'm not sure how you want to do it. Do you want to go through the whole presentation, or you want me to take questions after each slide or ask?
I'll leave it up to the body. If we wait to the end, it may make it a little tough on the people.
How many slides are there?
A lot, because CIP is included in the town manager's budget. So you're at 45 slides.
That'd be tough to answer a question ask questions after 45 different slides. What do you guys
Andy,
think?
is there a way to break it by topic?
Can either do it by slide or as we go through it and ask at the end. Either way, they're kind of in order.
I don't see why we can't ask questions as we go along if the chair would permit that. I mean, that seems to make the most sense at this point.
Or we could have questions after the budget before we go into CIP.
Yeah,
And
we
then
could
we
do that
would
too.
centralize it.
That would work for me.
Do that. Do that.
All right, so that's, let me see here. I'll go through 6 slides and then it goes into CIP. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, I'll go slow. So if anybody wants to stop me, just let me know. Okay, so the proposed budget, as you can see up on the screen, or 37,581,123. That's the 3 budgets together, as you can see below. So that's the total budget. spending increase of $1,176,644, or at 3.23% over the current year's budget. List the three budgets below: general government, Hebron Board of Education, Rand Board of Education, numbers there. And then, as I stated, after Ram's meeting last night, they decided to add in a new position, and they didn't take action on their money from the audit. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm supposedly going to get new numbers from Scott Leslie tomorrow on their surplus as well. So the proposed expenditures, these are the increases and decreases. You can see the percentages over on the right. You can see what was adopted expenditures in 2021, 2022. And you can see the proposed expenditures for the 22-23 budget. And the column just before the end to the right is the difference. So you can see total government. You can see the contribution to capital improvements, open space, cap non-reoccurring, contribution to capital projects, contribution to revaluation, contribution to debt management, debt service, and you have the town and government subtotal, Hebron Board of Education. All the way over to the right is the percentage of the increases, Rams with the assessment without debt, then Rams debt service, and then the total general government. Next up is the town government budget drivers and initiatives. So the first one, of course, is personnel. We're looking to replace the Parks and Rec's part-time office position, which was eliminated due to COVID. And then just before that, and then one other supervisor was eliminated. So we're looking to put the term part-time person back in the office. We increased this a little bit. Not quite full-time yet, but we're headed in that direction. That was a plan that we had put forward, that we would try to advance each budget to get closer to a full-time chief. Contractual salary increases and adjustments have been made in this budget. Also, there's a plan of conservation and development consultant, the town clerk land records program, insurance, then there's capital projects, open space. One of the drivers that I want to make clear is in this budget, and I'll speak to it as I go through another slide, is the AHM funding was transferred from the RAM Board of Ed and the local Board of Ed to the town. So that's a new amount that's going to be shown in the town's budget. And then building repairs and maintenance, Peter's house maintenance, and then painting for the library and the senior center. So under the capital expenditures, we have the CIP general government contribution of the $649,486. That's over to $75,000. Now the capital expenditures from $10,000 to $75,000. That's coming in at $206,796. And then revaluation is $40,000. That's annual contribution. And then the CIP contribution decreases made possible with the ARPA funding. Next, again, on the capital expenditures from $10,000 to $75,000, we have the Public Works Department. They're looking for a roll-off container to replace down at the transfer station. Under the fire department, there's new technology out where most of the equipment is now battery operated for rescue tools, exhaust fans, things of that nature. Industries. Parks and Recreation, they need 2 mowers. They mow all the towns and cemeteries and schools and fields. So they've been putting a lot of hours on those, and they're trying to get 2 new mowers. Miscellaneous is the demolition and the removal of the portable classrooms at Hebron Elementary School. And then we're looking to put in a facility study per the building committee for all town buildings, including the 2 elementaries. So that total capital expenditures of $206,796. So this is slide 7, and this is the CIP recommendations. So if we want to talk more about the budget, we can before we go into that.
Excuse me, Andy, this is Donna. This is just this in the summary for the budget overview. The CIP is later.
Okay, then I'll just continue to move forward.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. So this is the CIP recommendations for 2022, 2020. And you'll see over to the right, some of the requests that came in or some of the projects that were in the CIP that would fit possibly using the ARPA funds. You'll see ARPA written to the right-hand side of that. I know Donna had sent out the attorney's decision or opinion on how that money can be spent. And it looks like we're going to be breaking those items out into a separate list at this time. But for tonight, we'll just keep it the same so we can go through it. So under the CIP recommendations, there's road resurfacing for road improvements at 311-583. The bridge replacement on Old Colchester Road, that's the town's match. There's second year funding for the large dump truck, third year funding for security measures for town buildings, third year funding, police vehicle, Gilead Hill School roof restoration, CERT vehicle replacement, Pendleton Drive to Library Bridge, pedestrian bridge, Gilead Hill School playscape, skate park at Veterans Memorial Park playscape, and a pickleball court, 2 of them at Veterans. Total budget, including the ARPA funds, was $2,053,279. Under the CIP revenue recommendations, every year we try to use a balance from the previous appropriations. That would be $4,452. We always put the LoSAP funding in here at $70,751. Funding from other sources, the public safety fund, $11,000. The rescue funds, if those projects were to be approved, is $1,316,191. We have interest of $1,000 and the general fund contribution this year at $649,485 for a total revenue of $2,053,279. And you'll see completed projects below where the monies came from was some left over from the roadside mower, Board of Ed pickup truck, fire marshal vehicle. That was the old one. So in the town's budget, it'll say Hebron Board of Education, but they have an increase, or they're from 2022 to 2023. You can see 21-22 was 12,063,673. This year it's 12,457,294, or that's $393,621 increase, or 6%. So some of the things, because the way the town's made up, some of the things are in the town's budget that don't show in the school budget. And this isn't a criticism. I just want to make it clear, make sure everybody knows that on the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. So the SRO salary and the police vehicle, that comes out of the town's budget. The demolition of the portables, that's going to come out of the town's budget because it's a town building. And I stated earlier, HM shift from the regional school and elementary school, and then also the facility study, which would include the 2 schools. Those monies are all in the Hebron's budget, not in this number. RAM levy, you can see the difference between 2021, 2022 to 2022-23. You'll see the change. These were the numbers that we had at the time as we move forward. But Hebron change based on 22-23 levy is 47.17%. You can see the budget, $30,650,000. It's now $30,416,081. Change is $234,760, or 0.7%. So the increase to the town of Hebron at that time, last night when they presented, was $11,867. Hebron's levy 22-23 is $14,347,265. That includes $522,109 for a CIP budget. This next page will show you the RAM levy per town, levy calculations, and it goes from 1920 year to 22-23. Underneath there, you'll see on the right the what we're looking at for the next year's budget. For 16.63%, they went down. As you can see, Hebron went up, and Marlboro went up just slightly. And then the arrow is just to show you that line all the way across what year we're in, to take a look at those statistics. So this is the projected enrollment and grade combinations. So you'll see that line is 2022, 2023. Lists the grades at the top. We like slides. We always like to have pictures and slides. So this is the expenditure history we always show with the 3 entities in there. It shows, for the most part, we're pretty much consistent with what they're doing most of the time by the different colors. General government is orange, Haven Board of mustard, and RAM is gray, at least on my slide. Our famous pie chart, there was a lot of controversy on what colors we use. Hopefully we got that ironed out this year. So it's a budget overview. RAM now is 38%. Town of Hebron, I think, went up a little bit to 29%, and Hebron Board of Ed is 33%. And it lists the towns in 092-124, capital expenditures at 896-282, and open space at 175. Some monies that are in there are the CIP, the cap, 10,000 to 75,000, and the reval. So that's where that number is on the capital expenditures. Next slide. Thank you, Donna. Increase and decrease for fiscal year 2022, 2023 compared to last year. You'll see the adopted budget in the left-hand column, and then the proposed budget next to that, moving right. Further right, you'll see the difference. General government, 18,481. Other state revenues, minus 7,637. ECS and special ed grant funding, 624. Other revenue sources, 37,328. Unassigned debt management contribution, $48,000 less. Back taxes and liens, 55,000. So total revenue is 1,176,644, or to 3.23%. October 1, 2021's grand list. You can see at the real estate. It's a comparative totals of from 2020 to 2021. It shows you the real estate, personal property, the motor vehicle, and at the bottom, the net totals, and all the way to the right would be the percentages with the plus or minus sign. Also, the grand list account comparisons underneath for the real estate, the personal property, and the motor vehicle. Once again, 2020 compared to 2021 with the change, and also the percentage. At least it's going in the right direction. So another slide we like to show is the grand list profile. The asterisks will show the reval years. Unfortunately, once again, reval, what it did is the lesser expensive houses seem to have more of the value increase, so that would be more of a hit. Unfortunately, that's the way it turned out. So we're gonna, and as we sit right now, where the percentage of the budget is right now, before the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance get it and do any further cuts, not everybody's taxes are going up. There's a portion of them that are going down. Commercial apparently see. So right now, it's not like everybody has a tax increase the way it is. If we can get all the entities involved in this budget to come down a little bit, I think we can do good by the taxpayer. So I just wanted to put that out there. The grand list is what it is. Unfortunately, the smaller homes are taking the bigger hit, but not everybody. So it's a good start. And then this is our normal slide for the mill rate calculation, October 1st, 2021. There's your total grand list at $921,268,820. We always put aside $15,000 for Board of Assessment Appeals adjustments. Then the adjusted grand list from October 1st, 2021 is that $921,253,820. So a mill value this year with reval is $921,004. A mill value based on the current or upon a 98.50% collection rate is $907,435. Mill rate per proposed budget, 32 mills, 32.40 mills. So that's good news. How to calculate the mill rate? Adjusted grand list is divide 1,000, which equals the mill value, 21,253,820 divided by 1,000 equals that $921,254 mill. That's what that's worth. Tax revenue divided by mill value equals mill rate. So mill value at 98.50% collection rate equals 907,435. So you take the 29,396,748 divided by 907,435, that equals 40 mills. So that's the calculation for anybody that doesn't know that or wants to refresh themselves. It also shows how to calculate the real estate tax amount. So the assessed value, not the total value, or the assessed value of your home times the mill rate equals the tax. So a home that's worth $248,360 times 0.03240 will equal $8,047 in a tax payment. Proposed tax calculations, personal property and real estate is 98.50% collection rate equals a 32.40 mill rate. You'll see the reval year, you'll see the market value, you'll see the assessed value, and then you'll see what the 21-22 year taxes were, and then what we're doing with the proposed 22-23 taxes. These are properties we try to use within the town to show what the budget today, what the tax increase would be on these generic homes. One, as you can see, what value or assessed value the house is on the lower end, then a house that's in the middle end, and then the one at the bottom that's a more expensive home or valued at more. So if the budget were to go forward today without any adjustments from any of the entities, the proposed 2022 increase on the first home would be $392. On the middle home would be $399, and on the more expensive home on the bottom is $468 increase as of tonight. That's based on the October 2021 revaluation. And then we go into the CIP. Do you want to stop here or you want me to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please. Anybody have any questions?
I have a whole bunch.
So do I. But go ahead.
Okay. One was, we had talked about doing a full-time building inspector. Was that put in this or not?
So I didn't quite hear the question, but are you asking about a building inspector?
Yeah, like right now it's a building inspector, half-time building inspector. Were we gonna bring that up to full-time? We had talked about it last year.
We presently have a building inspector that's / also the town's fire marshal.
Yeah,
And I had conversations with him. He's hoping to go through this fiscal year. So no, that didn't come up through this budget cycle as of yet.
okay. I was just wondering, because we
That's
had.
okay.
And so the back tax revenue, I know we have some stuff on that's out there. Is this number based off of known information, or are we just taking a percentage of the back taxes? How are we calculating that?
I can give you a generic answer on that, and then we'll dive in with Elaine. In the past years, we've stepped up collection of back taxes.
Yeah, I know. You did
This
great
year,
job.
we're presently in the town attorney's hands where we're gonna have a tax sale. So we've cleaned up the books quite a bit, and we anticipate with this next tax sale, we're not gonna be receiving a lot more back tax revenue. So with that, we really didn't want to make too many adjustments with the advice of the tax collector, but I'll let Elaine speak.
Yeah, hi, good evening. So I asked the tax collector to go back the last 5 years on what we had collected in back taxes. And this number we came up with is an average. And as Andy said, the last 3 years, there was substantial back tax collection due to a lot more aggressive collection measures on the tax collector's part with foreclosure of 4 properties in town. So we have collected a lot of the severely delinquents. There are still some, but we did notice in the current fiscal year that a lot of people went on payment plans, or some people got caught up based on stimulus dollars they had received. So of course, those won't be anticipated for next year. So we took an average of what we anticipate, put it up another $55,000 for next year.
Thank you, Elaine. And then my last question is on the collection rate. I know we have talked about keeping it the same we've had historically because of COVID. Are we, this is out to the boards. Is this something that we want to bring back and discuss again? What the actual collection rate has been for the last couple of years? If this is realistic, or are we really collecting at like 99.5%?
Once again, I'll jump in just quickly. Once again, when we do the budgets, we do include the tax collector, and we ask for their opinion because they're the ones that are in the office. So once again, Elaine had a conversation with her regarding this, and she has a recommendation at this point, but we can get her to come in if you want to talk to her. But Elaine, could you address that conversation you had with her as well?
Sure. Based on what's happening now with the grand list and what's proposed for possible increases to some of the properties, Adrian the tax collector didn't feel comfortable in increasing the collection rate. She is willing to come in and speak more directly to it, but we do, and maybe there may be a little bit more of a struggle for next fiscal year with some people meeting their tax requirements. And again, people were utilizing a lot of their stimulus monies to pay in the last 2 years, which kept our collection rate at just around 100%. Adrian didn't feel comfortable that we should bump that up for next year. We can have her come in.
Thank you, Elaine. That's all I had.
Thank you, Janet.
Anyone else? Yes, Mel. You're on mute, Mel.
Sorry about that. One is a follow-up on one of Janet's questions, and it would be Elaine. Elaine, do we know, we do know that, as you said earlier, we pay back tax collection due to the efforts of the tax collector's office and some other factors. I don't know if you have this number or know this number, but we're obviously going to collect more back taxes, or at least we have a better chance of collecting a higher number of dollars in back taxes when we have a larger amount of back taxes owed. Know what the back taxes owed were 3, 4, 5 years ago when this increase started and versus what it is today. I would imagine that there are a lot fewer dollars in back taxes out there today than there were 3 or 4 years ago. Do you have any idea what that, if not the numbers, the percentage, or?
So I don't have the exact dollars, give you a generic response to that. So as some of those properties fall off, or they either get caught up or they sell their properties, or in the case where we foreclosed on some, those roll off, but then others roll on. So some come off the delinquent list and some come on for severe delinquencies. I mean, we're talking about properties that are 10 years plus taxes. So some of those roll off and then others come back on. So the dollar ratio has changed somewhat, but it has ultimately been staying in the past. I didn't really look at the numbers in comparison to the effect with this proposed budget and what the mill value is. But in the past years, it is equalized almost to a mill value, or for the past years, it was around $700,000. So my guess is it's still roughly around there, although Adrian did say, and I did not ask for the updated list, but I will get that for our future deliberations this month. But that, as I stated, some people have gone on payment plans, but some of the properties that are more than 10 years and severely delinquent, their taxes have almost the value of their homes. So that's where it's becoming extremely problematic at this point in time, and why we foreclosed on 4 properties last year and why we're now looking at tax sales. These individuals, even if they were to attempt to try and refinance or, you know, whatever with their properties, they're not going to get caught up. They're not going to get out from underneath. So I'll get those up to date, but it has equaled almost around $750,000 in years past. I don't know the exact number as of this date, though.
No, that's fine. It's kind of surprising. I thought that our dollar number would have been down, but obviously it's not. The other question I had, wondered if Andy could speak to, I find the different numbers, the $11,000 for RAM versus the $1 million increase. But for the benefit of any of those watching or others that are not clued into what happened, could you talk to the difference between the $1 million increase and why that's what it is versus the sheet where it says dollars?
Yeah, so I'm jumping around, but I'm prepared to jump around. So underneath the proposed RAM budget, the current year that we're in, the operating budget was $28,091,703. So the proposed budget for the 2022-2023 was $29,339,218. So the total is, for the proposed budget, is 30 million, at least at the beginning of last night's meeting, is $30,416,081. Thank you, Donna. So you can see the difference. Underneath the bottom, you'll see the difference. And that's the difference in the bond payment, or the amount of the bond payment from last fiscal year of 21-22 to $1,482,275 less they have to pay this year than they did last year. So they took $522,109 and they put that into the capital. That left $234,760 to offset that $30,416,081, or the percentage that you see at a minus 0.77. So then the calculation below, reduced by the interest, net RAM budget to be split between the towns, Hebron's share at 47.17%. Hebron's 2021-2022 budget levy was the 14,335,398. So the difference in that to the town of Hebron is still an increase of 11,867. So the budget is the 3839,309 with the debt added 507,956, and that total comes out to 14,347,265. So I hope that shows the number where you have the operating budget, then you have the total net budget, but you have the bond difference in payments from year to year. So it's 1,482,275 less than 122 for capital, which sometimes we do that as well. And then there's the offsetting revenue, the 234,760. So I was hoping in a $30 million budget with my speech in public session last night that they would bring it down so the town of Hebron could have a 0% increase and not have to pay that 1186.7. Because the other issue that we're facing is last year we took a credit on our levy for 360,122. That came right out of the levy payment. So we have to backfill that this year on top of the 11,867. So that's why it's a big increase in Hebron's budget. And then as of last night, they took no action on reducing their surplus, which is 630 some odd thousand. I'm hoping they find it within their hearts to distribute that back to the three towns, seeing they chose to use this money from debt savings on the capital. I'm hoping that once they see the ramifications that are going to go to the voting booth, that they'll realize that this may not pass.
Thanks,
Did
Andy.
I explain it okay now?
Yes, I think what people need to understand is a combination that we reduce due to the credit that we were given last year or for this year's budget of $363,000, along with the fact that we would have expected at least some of that reduction in debt service to be a reduction to the total budget. That's really the crux, the two big drivers of that increase there. But the actual additional dollars are still only $11,000.
Right, and I talked to a girl tonight, this is relevant to this town. So RAM early on verbally was predicting $1 million surplus. So the state statute says they can keep 2% of that. So the understanding in Marlboro at least was they were going to divide up around $400,000 amongst the three towns. So that $1 million didn't happen. It's only a $630 some odd thousand surplus. So they're entitled per the statute 2% to keep $600,000. They'd be dispersing the $30 some odd thousand left. So that would be a big number that Marlboro now has to backfill because they were planning on that extra revenue. And, you know, if they were to split that remaining money, that would get rid of the 11,867, but it doesn't help us backfill that credit from last year.
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's going to come up again in discussion or questions, I should say, to the public, because we almost ought to write that down on paper so people can actually see how we got from point A to point B. But thank you for going through that.
Diane has her hand up.
Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead, Diane.
I have an additional question on Mal's questions answers. So there was surplus for the 2021 budget year with RAM, I think is what you're saying, of
Yes.
about $600,000.
Not sure what the total was, but we received $163,922 as our portion of the surplus.
Well, that was the year before, but you're saying that they
Right.
anticipated they would also have, I think your answer was there was They anticipated having $1 million surplus. They only had 600, so they got to keep that. And they're not going to, you don't think that they're going to distribute that, right? So my question is going to be around that $600,000 that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what
Okay.
they're gonna do with it. They didn't take any action last night.
So if they don't give the towns, is there, how can they spend it? Do they have, does the board make a decision on what they spend that money on? Or do they, and it's solely just the RAM Board of Education purview to spend $600,000 as they please?
They're the authority that's allowed to keep that 2% that falls underneath their preview.
If I can add to that, Andy, the statute allows them to keep 2% and spend it on either or retirement benefits, for instance, if when people retire, they get 6 months of insurance, whatever. If administrators retire, they get some sort of a money when they retire. They can put money aside to fund that type of thing. When Dr. Szymanski retired, he had not taken his last few years of 403B contributions. It was put aside so that when he retired, he'd get a lump sum. They could have funded that out of end of year monies. The other thing that they can fund are capital projects, but those capital must be, and the answer, Andy was very clear to say that they're the experts. They can decide where, but the process has to be that they identify what the projects are, how much they're going to cost, and then it gets that listing has to be approved by the district meeting.
The district meeting being the nation?
No, the RAM district
RAM.
meeting in May, they will have a meeting where they will discuss next year's budget as well as what they want to do with the excess money that they're allowed to keep. It doesn't have to be done in May, but before that plan becomes in stone, it has to be approved by meaning the voters. They have to have a meeting that allows voters from all three towns to vote on that list. And they can't change that without the permission of the voters. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so basically, I just wanted to have a discussion around what they can do with that money and make sure that to this conversation would have some idea of where that money is going, because it's a pretty sizable pot. Thank you.
Yes, Peter.
If I could just follow up on Diane's question, Mal, I don't know if you have or Diane's discussion. Mal, do you have a historic recollection of the average surplus that RAM has year over year, and how often the money comes back to the towns?
That was a number that got tossed around, and every year they were giving back monies. And in the last 10 years, up until about 3 years ago, and Elaine's also a pretty big expert on this. I believe the total monies that were being divided between the three towns were anywhere from 200,000. Does that sound close, Elaine, prior to these big numbers? And then since then, we've seen some pretty big numbers. I mean, I never remember seeing $1 million left in a budget at the end of the year. Now, what has happened, which gives them the larger pot of money, the 2% that Diane was just referring, is that the law changed 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, they were allowed to keep 1% or, $300,000. As of last year, the law changed. Well, the law changed for regular districts about 4 years ago, but it didn't include regional school districts. Last year, it changed so that the regional school districts could keep 2% as opposed to the 1%. So, and the law also, they were for years actually cutting checks and sending them back to the town. Isn't that true, Elaine? They were cutting checks and sending them back to the town.
Obviously, but the last 2 years were taken in the forms of credits
Right.
against our levy.
The law reads now, and the law has always read that they can either use excess money in the manner that Diane was asking about, for capital or for retirement benefits, or they could credit. There was no ability, and there is still under the law, to pass cash back on to the towns. They can just use that to credit the levy, and it's very clear. I think it's Connecticut statute 10.51B that states that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a couple. On the AHM town, you want to just do a quick explanation as to the dollar shift? What used to be in the different Board of Ed budgets has gotten changed, and so now it's coming out of the town budget. So do you just want to kind of go over a little bit of that history and maybe some of the whatever?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'm gonna tap Mel and let Mel know why AHM changed the formula. We just recently did that. And hopefully while Mel's doing that, Donna can look up for me the monies that used to come out of the local school district and the Ram school district and what's getting put into our budget. She'll have that as well. But AHM changed their policy. We were involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 2 years ago changed. If you were to go now and look at the policy, you would see that in the updated policy that was passed a year ago, January, the billing was no longer going to go to the towns, the school boards, and the regional school district. One of the reasons it was changed was for AHM to collect the dollars. The second reason was there had been a situation at RAM where an administrator was trying to use the dollars that were collected by RAM in the levy from each town, use those dollars to purchase services other than.
AHM.
Oh, the decision. I'm sorry?
AHM.
I'm sorry. AHM. It was RAM administration was looking to use the money they collected from the towns in the levy to purchase services away from AHM. So the decision by the oversight, well, if they want to do that, they're certainly entitled to do that, but they're going to need to do that with their own money. And in order to so we no longer pay the dollars that it costs to provide services in grades 7 through 12. We no longer pay them to the RAM Board of Ed. Instead, those are in the town's budget. Now, the towns were given the authority or had the ability to do whatever they wanted to do with the local boards of ed. You know, the local board of ed could still put it in their budget, or the town could put it in their budget, but it's still reported to the state. What do we pay for the local board of ed? Is it 30 something? No, it's 62,000.
64 or something, yeah.
Yeah. Instead of the administration, town manager's office, I believe, please don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think they decided that they would take that out of the school budget and pay it from the town budget, just so it was all, but the schools still have to report that as a school expense. So it's
But, you
just.
know, I'll jump in if I can, Mel. So Danny, for transparency and clarity, and then I'll let Donna come forward if she has the numbers, but as Mel stated, the school was hiring out other services on their own that wasn't with AHM, good, bad, or indifferent. So when you looked at a budget, you weren't sure what was the AHM contribution, school hiring out on their own. So in order to make it cleaner, the AHM monies are now in the town's budget, even though the services go to the schools, but we know exactly what we're paying AHM. And then the schools still contract with them on and above. So when you look at the Board of Ed's budget, you'll see AHM services, but those are services they've chose on and above the actual AHM budget for the services we render.
Correct. But I think one too is that their percent increase is actually does not include the town's dollar amounts are those dollar amounts are going up when normally or before that would have been school dollar amounts. So that becomes an increase to the town for the schools. And even though, and I know they do the in-kind dollar amounts and all that, but when the voter looks at it, they're seeing a dollar amount that is actually what used to be in the school budget. So their percent increase is not showing those dollars, but the town's budget increase.
Right.
Does that make it?
Equate that to the same situation for the resource officer. Their budget doesn't reflect the cost for the resource officers. It doesn't reflect the cost for services from AHM. So, I mean, that's probably a number that we want to at least float out during these proceedings, so the taxpayers are fully aware.
Well, for clarity and transparency, yes. I mean, we still need the same dollars, but people look at the different pots and they need to be able to see how that translates from one to the other. You know, just to keep the actual percentages correct. You know. Then my other vehicle, that's used by other towns. Are any of the other towns putting in money into that cert vehicle?
Danny, if I can interrupt you for a minute, if I have your permission, I did ask Don.
Yes, please.
Don, I'm not sure if you found those numbers, and knowing you probably did.
So I don't have all of the backup detail with the breakdowns. That's one of the downsides of virtual meetings. But in your budget, there is the breakdown of the new formula, and it's broken down for the pre-K through 12 enrollment. And for Hebron, that's 13,000 or 1,300 students. And then the town CIRC profile is the other part of it. and that's the 9,012. They decided to change that formula because they are serving an older population. It used to only be students in the schools, and now it's the students and families, and they've extended their reach to adults.
Right.
So, so the formula changed, but the shift to Hebron this year is about $74,000 more. And that is
Yeah.
some of RAM, some of Hebron Board of Ed, and then a slight increase to the town budget. And as Andy said, the local Board of Ed has additional contracts with AHM for each elementary school. So those will show up in their budget. But the regular AHM services in the schools are in our budget now. And we can get the deeper on that if you'd like.
Diane?
Dan, I was on the same path you were, where you are. And so, it's not just AHM and the SRO, but Andy did a good job of telling us when he went through it that it also includes the police vehicle and part of the facility study. So it might be good for us to try to figure out, when we are doing this, so that we can kind of see, what percentage of the town budget we're carrying that is representative of maybe a different bucket, if you will. And so when you look at the picture in the presentation that Andy has of the graphs with the totals side by side, you see that there's an increase in the town budget a couple of years back, and I think that probably is when we added the SRO, right? And so that's a change to the town's budget that somebody who hasn't been part of this process wouldn't know. Much like this year, if, as you see, as AHM moves over, that expense is going to make the town, but it's associated with the school. So it'd be good to have sort of something, one summary that includes some of this stuff so that we can just understand what percentage of the town's budget is really associated with maybe the Board of Education or RAM.
Can we add a line to the proposed budget, the summary one? And under the town budget, you have town overtime, you have a line that says town's expenses supporting education, and then stick that in there. So that it's quite clear what things are the town is paying for.
We can do another, like a slide or a page. Some of the monies are coming out of payroll. Some of the monies are coming out of amortization over the years for the vehicle. Study for all the town buildings. The schools are 2 of them, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to percentage that out, but I'm sure we could come up with a number. I just don't want it to be erroneous.
Right.
Andy,
Dan, it's Mark.
I would not take any of the facility study out, because what that facility study will identify are items that the Board of Education is not responsible for.
Okay.
Major systems. I agree with that Diane has, except that, for instance, if the facility study says we need to remove the boilers and put new boilers in, that's something that the town would pay for anyways. It wouldn't be the board. So,
Right.
we could identify it, but it's not something that normally would be their expense anyway.
Hey, Dan, it's Mark. I'd like to make a comment with what Janet said, what Diane said. Why are we going through all these obfuscations to explain why we're paying for the SRO at the elementary school? Why don't they just pay for it? Why do we have to make it clear? Why do we have to make a presentation of it? Why do we have to explain it? They're the ones who should be responsible for paying for it.
Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I can research that again. It's not the first time that it's come up. But I think you'll know more than anybody that the person that works at the school has to be affiliated with the town's police force, which they are. Secondly, there was an issue with insurance, so it had to be a town employee, not a school employee. So that kind of dictated with those two things, that's where the money would come to pay for the resource officer. When we initially looked at this with Superintendent Van Tassel, their intent was to on their payroll to do this, but when we got looking into it, we did the deep dive. Our insurance company wasn't looking to permit that, and then the actual affiliation with the police department would have to be a certified policeman with the town and its department. So that's how that came about.
Right. Well, by state statute, only a town can certify an officer. But we do that with RAM, and there's two reasons we do that with RAM. One, because 3 of them, so they have
Right.
to split the bill there. But the same argument applies there. It's not RAM's police officer. It's Hebron's police officer who subcontracted to RAM to provide that service. So basically the same thing could happen here in a sense. He's still a certified Hebron police officer with all the powers of arrest and every other state allowed. But it's basically, they should pay for it. They asked for it. They want it. I think it's necessary, and I want there to be a school resource officer there.
Yeah.
But you know, that'd be like them. They ask us to pay for something for them. Why don't we ask them to pay for something for us? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense to me.
Well, I once again, it falls down to the insurance and how it's covered. So your sort of description, but RAM is a different entity where the insurance company looks at the Hebron Board of Ed and the town itself as one entity. So in their mind, he has to be affiliated with the town. It's going through the town's payroll. We do his pay, we pay him. RAM has a separate contract as a separate entity. We negotiate that. We have an agreement with the, you can call it a contract, but it's an agreement with the local school, but it's, so that was the reason. I'm not saying we can't come up with a number, but it still would have to come from the town.
Okay. I'm still not, I get the legality of it to a degree, but it's still, I don't think it's right. That's just what I want to forward. I'm done.
If you didn't want to do yeah, I don't think you need to go through everything, because what we're trying to money move from one bucket to another for this year. I mean, you could put just a footnote and say, AHM is funded out of the town for 75K. This money resided in the schools last year. And then you have something where people can look and see. It's just noting it somehow.
Okay. Any other questions? Let's say, my only other question.
I have one, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Pete.
Unrelated to that. I was just wondering if, when we looked at the reevaluation, and there's obviously been initially some general public misunderstanding of the reevaluation and the impact. Did you catch of Hebron taxpayers who will be paying more? I know you referenced there was a bigger burden on some of the lower valued homes, and some of the businesses will be getting a credit. But my question is two-part: was that calculated like a 75% of Hebron who was paying more, and then what is the average increase? Did you do that math? I'm just not sure. I just was wondering if you had.
Yeah, we're actually working on that. So for tonight, the way the book actually printed out a list of everybody's taxes and the increases, and we're going to have that. We're going to put it online. We're going to put it at the library. We're going to have the town clerk's office and the senior center. But I think Donna has the percentage more than I do. I don't want to misquote it, but as of right now, and I know we're not done with the budget, I know we're going to fine tune it, but Wasn't it like a 60-40, Donna, with the lower?
It was and this is a
That's fine.
64% we're seeing an increase and 36% we're seeing a decrease. And some of them are significant increases or decreases, and some of them are pennies. But that was the split.
Donna, did you do it like an average, like, so the average increase?
No.
Okay.
I didn't get into that deep of an analysis. And Deb Gernhardt, the assistant to the Selectmen's meeting on Thursday night. So if there's any analysis that you would like to see, I mean, we could request that she help us prepare some things. If there's specifics, you could let us know.
That'd be great. I just think that the average, the homeowner is going to say, well, geez, I'm up, let's just say 10%. Oh my goodness, why am I being picked on? Well, no, the average was 12 or the average was 9. It just sort of helps relatively understand the impact.
So hard to do that because it depends on the, the style of the home. Certain houses increased in value a lot more than other homes. Some of it came down to, when you look at the list, you'll see there's whole streets that it seems like it could be the location had an impact. We know the houses around the lake increased in value. Some of the newer subdivisions did not increase in value. It's not a simple average of
Right.
of
No, I know
homes.
that. I just think that most people aren't really concerned about how, they're concerned about how much. So
Right.
I understand that there's complexities. I don't know why I got 2 reevaluations that were different by $100. So I don't know why I got a second reevaluation, but I don't really care. I just care about how much more I'm paying. So I think about it from the public's perspective, not to complexity or the individual nature of it, just people sort of want to know where they stand on the chart. But that's fine. I can talk to more about it.
Comparison list is on our website. It'll be up there tonight, and it's,
Okay.
pretty lengthy, but you can find your property by your street address.
Thank you.
Everybody can check their property. We found that probably would be the best way to do it, because people are gonna be concerned about how they're affected. So we figure we just do that. It's easier to present it. And as Donna pointed out, like most of Main Street, that went down. Those assessments, surprisingly to me, those assessments are gonna pay less in taxes. So some of it's due to location, the lake. Those houses are, more desirable. Their assessments up. It's kind of tough to figure this one, but some commercial stuff is down.
I agree. It is tough. It is tough.
Looking at the exhibit that you guys sent us today, I put in the negatives, the people that are going down, but the average for the people going up is $470, which is not nothing.
Yeah, as of tonight, right?
Yeah. And as I was talking to Andy before, you got to understand how mortgages work. If you have a mortgage on a house, that they pay the new amount, and then they come back at you, like if it's a year later or like a couple months later, and say, hey, your taxes went up, you owe us for this, and you have to give us money for January, and then you have to give us money for all of next year because we think this is going to continue to happen. So you almost double these numbers.
She's talking about the escrow. If you have your mortgage and taxes escrowed, they'll double up on that once the increase hits them. They'll
Yep.
pay it and then charge, and then they'll recalculate and charge you again.
Yep. So, this could be $1,000 to the people based on escrow.
Okay.
I would like to see on the information that we're getting, maybe categories. So, you said like 60-something% is going up. I'd like to see, what percentage is like, 1 to 200 to 500, and then, 500 to 1,000, and just like percentages. So we have a feel for the real impact.
All right, so we'll talk to the assessor, Deb, and see if she can't put something like that together.
Okay. Other questions? Moving on.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the budget, Don, I'll put that back up on the screen, is the CIP recommendations for the 2023. So this is what the town manager proposed. These things can be added, changed, less value put towards them, pushed out. This is due to the structure of the CIP manager versus the actual committee, so it's lumped into this presentation as well. So with that, this is the town managers without any backup given to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. These are the department head requests, and as the town manager saw fit to move forward for you to review and add, delete, or approve. So projects funded through the general government budget, and priority is the road resurfacing improvements, 1,583. And we'll get into that when we look at the town managers of the sheet. I think he was originally looking for 500,000. Large dump truck with plow replaces truck 26. This is the second year's funding that would finalize that at 145,000. The roll-off truck replaces truck 15. We have all the backup information on that. This is the third year of funding that'll complete that project with the 168,505. Security measures, town buildings. This is the third year of funding at 62,000. That's ongoing. And then we got a placeholder in there for the Gilead Hill School roof restoration because we're not ready to go out to bid for that this year. So we just wanted to put some monies in there in case there was an issue with the doing the RFP and the consulting, looking at that, or we needed more money for the facility study for the school. So we just wanted to put that placeholder, knowing we're going to have to do that project.
Andy,
Yes.
Chairman Larson, can I
Yes.
ask Andy a question before we move on?
Sure, please.
Thank you. Andy, on 3 of these, they're a second year or third year. On 2 of them, you said it's the second of 2, the third of 3. But the last one there, security measures, you should going. What's ongoing mean? Like, do you anticipate that's 5 years or?
What we're doing now is that money would, we're looking to enhance cameras. Some of the facilities that was brought up, if we're going to be building a pickleball skateboard park, we need better cameras at the Vets Park because that got vandalized. This is for entry pads into the fire stations and the town buildings. The keys that we have now. Donna can speak a little bit more to the security measures and got her heading up that. But yeah, I don't think this money will complete that. It's just going to.
It does not. There would be one more year of funding and you'll see that in the 5-year plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. And that's fine. If I say something and you want to stop me, just ask and I'll stop. Thank you, Diane. Okay, so on page 23, am I there yet? Yes. CIP recommendations continued. So projects proposed for the ARP funding. This money, we were kicking around where to take it from, but if this is going to be approved for ARP money, we're suggesting maybe take that money from there. We always knew that we were going to have a match, and there's a couple different areas we could have fund this from, but we put that in there just for a placeholder. We need a new police vehicle. So that's 85,975. Hopefully we can get that through ARPA money. The CERT vehicle replacement. Now, Danny, did you have a question on that? You said that's used by the couple different
I'm just
towns.
wondering, is that an entire Hebron load, or because that seems to cover or work for both Andover and are they putting anything towards this?
Yeah, I haven't approached them yet, but the agreement we have now with the vehicle we have now is much or less expensive, but they helped and assisted with the maintenance of it, fuel, I believe, and a couple other things. But yes, we would definitely look for them to, try to help us out with that. But as of right now, we got budgetary numbers. He went out and got prices on a used vehicle, and they were coming in high because you can't get new ones. It's a steep price, but we put it in there.
Thank you.
A long time project that we're hoping for economic development purposes and what's going on behind the library would be the Pendleton Drive Library Pedestrian Bridge that would connect the library parking lot over to Pendleton Drive by Patty Dunn's. And they think that's a good route for AHM and behind the firehouse for the kids to travel and people from the library to themselves walking throughout the village. Gilead Hill School Playscape, they're looking to put a playscape up there. Their age differences, they want them for the younger kids. There's one up there now in the back, but it's more for older kids. This would be for the much younger kids. So that's a request that we could put in there. Skate park at Veterans Memorial, that got damaged 2 years ago from when we originally built it out of wood and metal. So there's a proposal to put a smaller version of one back in there to keep the kids out of the center of town and away from Ram High School. And that would be done, I think, possibly in a combination of concrete and some steel. That would be less easy to vandalize. There's also a Veterans Memorial Park Playscape. That one there is quite old. So they're looking to update that and make that safe again and update it. And then we're looking at upcoming craze is pickleball. So they're looking to put in 2 pickleball courts at Veterans Park. Once again, hoping that we can do this with ARPA monies that would be approved for that kind of recreational activity.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question on the slide?
Go ahead, please.
It's Mike McCormick. Andy, just this issue came up at the Board of Finance meeting last week on the pickleball courts.
Yep.
Why is that included in recommendations if the budgeted cost is below $75,000?
That's a good question, Mike. So the 2 pickleball courts, we're looking to put them in concert in the same area as the skateboard park. So it'd be cheaper for the town to do them both at the same time. So if you total the 2 projects, it's over the 75,000. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not.
So
where
65.
Yeah, so where the original skateboard park is now, we're gonna reduce that. And in doing that, we're gonna section it off so we can put in 2 new pickleball courts at the same time we have the contractor do the skateboard park. So it's kind of one area, hopefully get done at once. Otherwise you got mobilization and contractors going and coming, they're gonna charge you for that. So it was brought to our attention from the Parks and Recreation Commission that they wanted to put that there. So we're moving it forward in that fashion, but that's the rationale for that.
Great, and that your explanation may answer my second question because the pickleball courts were in last year's budget at an estimated cost of $90,000. Is the drop because of that reason that you're going to be doing it together?
That's one of the reasons, but we had them go out and get more quotes and they came in with these prices. That came right from the Parks and Rec director, from a contractor that recently just installed these. I'm not sure which one to use, whether it was either Vernon or Colchester, but yeah, they updated their prices and both the skate park came in less than what originally the quotes were, and then that's what they came in with for the pickleball courts.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
I have a quick question. The combined project total being over $100,000, that would all then be done. How would that work? And was that figured?
Hadn't gotten that far yet, Dan.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what the regulation is with the ARPA monies if we broke that out. I mean, I think if that was gonna hit the rate, we would try to break those 2 out so we didn't hit that rate. I mean, that's just, good point, common sense, we would split that up, but the rationale is it's going on the same footprint, the same pavement that's there. We want to do it at the same time, but if the 2 things were gonna push us into a prevailing wage rate and that, we would separate them out.
Okay, I just happened to think about that.
Yep.
Sorry.
No,
Thank you.
good point. So that total recommended CIP budget with those ARPA funds is $2,053,279. Hebron Road maintenance, resurfacing and repair. So we have roughly 80 miles of road worth approximately $34 million. Continuing with timely maintenance is more cost effective than deferring until deteriorated and having to do a total redo. Safer roads to travel, quicker emergency response, including snow, more comfortable ride, less wear on vehicles, efficient and economic preservation of our largest town's asset. Next is the old Colchester Bridge replacement. So this was identified by the State Bridge Program as in poor condition. So once it reaches that, there's a liability for the town. So we had the engineers take a look at it, and we submitted a grant to the state for the bridge program, which we got approved for. So at this time, without going out to bid and having the final numbers, the percentage is an 80-20 match, bringing it in as the town's match right now is $544,700. Next is a 6-wheel dump truck. It's a 2003. So think about your own vehicles and what year they are with the stuff that's being put on the roads by these trucks. So if they're putting them on the road and that stuff's in these trucks, I think your 2000 purpose. Fortunately, with the COVID and the supply and demand, the amount for a new vehicle has climbed immensely. So this is the second year of funding, as I stated earlier.
Andy, if I may I ask a question?
But
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you referenced a couple times to the escalated cost of the equipment, the vehicle, and then are there any projections in what you've been hearing that prices could potentially come down in a couple of years, like you've seen in other areas where there's the sort of temporary spike, and then as supply and demand sort of settles down a little bit. So is there any sense to waiting, or is it just not even something that's being considered? You think the prices will stay up?
That's a great question. We're all hoping that the prices are going to come down, but we did take a couple corrective measures because the cost of a plow truck is now up to the tune of $245,000 total. So what we did is, thank you to the Board of Finance and their cooperation early on in the year, instead of replacing a truck that was in the 5-year plan, we took it out of there and we just replaced the rear body on it for about, I don't know, I think it was like $35,000. That's now been installed at the public works facility, and the truck is in use. And that pushed that truck out 5 years. So that was one way to take one expenditure a couple of years at $245,000 and kick the can down the road, but with a truck that will perform what we needed to do. The second thing we've done, which we've never done before, is we've been using a contractor. Instead of buying another truck or another route, we have a contractor coming in as needed for the bigger storms, and we're lessening the CIP expense on plow trucks in that manner as well. So with those two measures, we're hoping to give the taxpayers a reliability of cleaning the roads done in a timely fashion, and that'll buy us some time to see if these prices are going to come down. If they don't come down, we might have to look to alternative measures of possibly more subbing out with, you can't sub it all out, because if the contractor breaks, they just go home and they're done for the night, where we don't have that luxury. We have to still get the roads done one way or another. So you can't have all contractors, but we can start to do a ratio to offset the CIP cost when it's getting this high.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, is this a new truck that we're pricing here?
Yes, this would be replacing a 2003 truck with a brand new snowplow truck.
Thank you.
Next, we haul our own trash in Hebron, and that has some savings at times. But definitely, we don't have to rely on anybody, and we can move cans and swap out things at the transfer station whenever we need, which is a very good situation to have versus being dependent on somebody that could break down or not be available due to staffing. So since I've been here, we've run a transfer station and have hauled our own trash. So this would be replacing 105 Kenworth. This will still have some value to it for trade-in purposes, but they're feeling because of the dependability that we need, we can't afford to have this truck broken down and wait for months because we'd have to use a subcontractor to come in and haul, which would be quite expensive. So we're feeling before this thing gets to a point where it's going to be down for weeks at a time, getting major repairs done to it, it'd be better to either sell this or try a new one. So this is, what year funding is this? This is the last year of 3-year funding, I believe. And it spells out, it's a 2005 Kenworth, hauls the trash, there's the miles on it. Been in service for 16 years, there's rust between the double frames. The last 4 years, over $29,000 in repairs. So the total funding request is $268,505, 100. So we're recommending $168,505 for this year. As Donna stated earlier, here's the security measures at all town buildings. So access control systems, video surveillance systems, burglar and fire alarm updates. Be the town buildings would be the town office, the Horton House, the fire station, the Douglas Library, the Senior Center, the Parks and Rec Department. So we're kind of behind the times when it comes to this. As the building committee, Mel's on that committee knows, we don't even have temperature alarms on some of these things. And if you have a 3-day weekend and we're out of there, we could have pipes freeze and things like that. So we really need to start stepping up some of these alarms and these monitoring systems for the buildings, not only for fire and burglar and surveillance, but also just for heat. It could be very costly in our insurance. No sooner than the building committee brings it up, the town hall went down over the long weekend, and the staff came into like 50-degree temperatures. I don't remember what day it was. Was it Veterans Day, Donna, or?
Last Monday, I think, was the holiday, and when we came in on Tuesday, it was 50 degrees or.
So we weren't sure how long it had been down, but it took a long time for it to get back and fixed it. There was a problem with the gas furnace, but they repaired it, thank God. But so I think this is important that we fund this and continue to do that. We need surveillance. We need to, monitor for insurance purposes what goes on our properties, and also the police have been using a lot of camera surveillance when it comes to looking up certain things. So we want to stay with the times, and we really haven't been.
Yeah, I know it's covered, this is Peter again, I know it's covered in the 5-year, but 53,000 in additional security measures budgeted for 23-24. Why wouldn't we do that now?
I think just for the ease of the budget, but we've been working with a contractor and we've been getting quotes on certain things. So we want to make sure we just don't have the money sitting there. We want to start executing some of these projects. So I think we got enough on our plate for right now. So I want to, you're going to crawl before you walk, but we could if.
Well, I mean, for me, it's a personal thing. If it's in the category of security, I don't like to wait. If people's safety is involved and we have the funds with these additional federal dollars, if that could contribute. It just was an observation, is I don't like to wait on anything under the category of security, unless, again, it's a nice to have versus a need to have. But to me, if it falls under security, it feels like it's a need to have. So I just would want to know at some point, it doesn't have to be now, but what are those 50, what are those being attributed to? And should we be looking at trying to accelerate that? But if it's too much to do at one time, I'm not trying to force it. I am concerned if it's under the category of security.
So noted.
Mr. Chairman, could I add to that
Go ahead, please.
explanation? One of the other issues too, Peter, with CIP projects is we need to try to deplete in the year that the funds are requested. That has been a strong recommendation by the auditors, and not be carrying balances. they understand the need, like with the dump trucks and things of that magnitude, but we want to try to get as many of the projects complete in the fiscal year that the funding is allocated.
Thank you.
Okay, next. So this is a police vehicle that we need to replace a vehicle that we have now. So this vehicle, a lot of police departments in rural towns like Hebron and Colchester and East Hampton are looking into these now. They're making them more convenient for police vehicles. So it'll be a 2022 Ford F-150 responder police truck, which includes a mobile license plate recognition. It's replacing a Ford Crown Victoria, and we're proposing using the ARPA funds for that. So the car's quite old. The computer system, and it doesn't make sense for that old of a car for us to put all the new cameras and stuff in there. If it's that old, we're going to get rid of it. So we're looking to buy a truck versus an SUV to tow the message board sign around as needed, and also be able to put barricades and things in the back. So when we need to close a road or a Function People Fest or Hebron Day or things of that nature, where they can do that without having to commandeer the Public Works Department every time. So that was the thought behind that. And I think it's a good one, because we're increasing our police force. We got SROs in the 2 schools, and then we have patrols, and then we have a resident trooper. But we've been doing really good with our police force, and we've stepped up patrols, and it's a lot, safer than it was a while ago. So this would only help enhance that. We have new regulations coming down the pipe that you got to have computers, and it just didn't make sense to suit up that old car knowing it's kind of obsolete. But I think I see some hands, or did.
Yep. Chairman
Go ahead.
Larson, is it okay if I ask a question?
Sure.
How many police vehicles do we have, and what are their ages? Is this the only old one, or are there others?
Yeah, I'll let Mark answer that, but this is the oldest one. And I think we have, I'm not even gonna guess, I think we have 4 or 5, but Mark, could you address that?
Certainly. We have 2 old Crown Vics that are both obsolete. One Andy was speaking of, there's even, which doesn't even have a radio in it anymore. And as you guys know, police vehicles have to be pursuit rated to be able to respond to emergencies. So they're not the safest vehicles anymore. So we have 3 vehicles that are really capable of being in service. 2 are allocated to the school resource officers, because you can't have a school resource officer at a school without a vehicle. So that really only leaves patrol right now. And we share that. So if you kind of had a need to be out there with more than 2 vehicles, it's pretty difficult. You'd have to borrow one from the SRO or hope he wasn't working. So in essence, we're 2 short, but we're shooting for 1. That's the best I can tell you. And with the new accountability bill, in addition to all the cameras, because it protects the public and police, and any way we can make the public feel safer and increase communication and make the community, better aware to what police are doing. I love all that, but there's a lot of things that we need to do, and the town's pretty much been keeping up with them, but we just need to continue down this road. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that. Good job, Mark. I appreciate it. So the older Crown Vic, the gray one, we kind of retired that already. We use that. It still has lights on it for like the fair or the function, but as Mark stated, that's really not a police vehicle anymore. So we're trying to be responsible at the same time. We want to move one new one forward, and that will replace the white Crown Vic that's in the picture below, because that's the one I was talking about, not putting new radios or cameras in. We're not going to put any money until we've kind of used that at town hall a little bit at times, and then we kind of suited that back up for, like I said, a spare for functions to have it out there, but in no way is that legal for a police officer to be using on a daily basis. So, but Mark's right. So we're looking to hopefully clearly replace this one in case one breaks down or one's in the garage being serviced or something, you need another one. And we've got more police on at the same time with the 2 SROs. So Mark stated good about the vehicles being in use.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the elementary school roof replacement and restoration. So roof projects are planned for both the Gilead Hill School and the Hebron Elementary Schools over the next few years. The funding recommendation allows for design and planning so working with the build committee in the schools, we're not ready to do the roofs yet. So we didn't feel it was appropriate to have the funding in it to do the roofs, as Elaine stated, if it was just going to sit there and not be used in that budget season. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we put extra money in there in case you needed it for the design or evaluation of the buildings, but at the same time, be prepared once that roof comes available, probably next year, we will be seeking portion to do that project and hopefully get a little bit more than 50% funding from the state to offset the cost on that. And as Danny stated earlier, we're looking, CERT has been very instrumental in this pandemic, working at the school, working with the Chatham Health District, and working with the residents of Hebron and distribution. Kits, testing at the site, helping the contractors that was hired through the Chatham Health District. And every time we've had a function up there, we got nothing but kudos and what a nice job they did. It was in extreme weather. The contracted vendor didn't have cover for the elements, so they were able to use the truck and keep them in cycles warm and make sure they're able to hold some of these testing facilities and also distribution of testing kits, masks, and so on. So this is a 20-year-old retired ambulance that supports emergency management response, EMT training, and we're hoping to propose that with ARPA funds. So we looked around and we were hoping to get better numbers than what we got, but anything decent was around the $115,000 range. Next up, this is I think a pet peeve of Chairman Larson's, not a pet peeve, but a project.
Yes, thank you.
Pendleton Drive to the library pedestrian bridge. This is a bridge over the brook separating the library parking lot and the Pendleton Drive. This would include stone dust paths from the parking to the bridge into the cul-de-sac, along with some lighting to make it safe and provides for a safe and secure pedestrian. This is also proposed with the ARPA funding. Gilead Hill School playscape replacement and talking with the Board of Ed. They're very interested in moving this forward. So installation of additional playscape at the Gilead Hill School to improve playground access for preschoolers and kindergartners, also proposed with ARPA funding. And now this gives a more better depicted Mike. This is a skateboard park replacement at Veterans Memorial Park. Replaced outdated skateboard park and will share the space with the pickleball courts, and this also is proposed with the ARPA funding. So that shows the layout, that shows it's in the same area. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Once again, we're looking for a playscape at Veterans Memorial, quite old, and it's outdated. It needs to be updated and made safe. It replaces a 30-year-old playscape, and we're also proposing to do that with ARPA funds.
Andy, on the
Yes.
on the skateboard park, the current one is fenced in. Is this going to be fenced in, or it looks as if not?
Yeah, no, I believe it's going to be fenced in. I think pictures they pulled up just for the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
It's my understanding that's going to be fenced in.
Thank you.
So once again, this is a separate request for the pickleball courts, but it's a shared space with the skate park. Fastest growing sport in the country. Life expectancy is 25 years. Resurface every 4 to 8 years, and proposed ARPA funding. And then you have the CIP 5-year plan that we're required to have. So these are the list of things and the years moving out. Some of them are placeholders. We've pushed some stuff out like the roofs because of the eligibility, as we just talked about. But there's your list. It starts off with the roads, and it goes into public works, and then it goes into next year's, so on and so forth. Second page is also part of the CIP 5-year plan, along with the boards of education and the fire department and EMS. Same thing. We went through the requests that we're looking for in this year's budget. Five-year plan, recreation, Douglas Library, Senior Center, same thing. Now, the budget process, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. So the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance reviewed the budget during the month of March. The Board of Selectmen make a recommendation to the Board of Finance by March 31st. Then we look to hearing, the Board of Selectmen's public hearing. Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, 7 p.m. Right now it's listed as virtual, unless something changes. And then we go into the budget process where the Board of Finance will hold a public hearing on the Board of Finance's recommended budget no later than the third Tuesday in April. The budget hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, April 19 p.m. The meeting format and location to be discussed with the chairman of the Board of Finance. Budget process, due to the charter 903, referendum vote on the town budget and the capital improvement budget, Tuesday, May 3rd, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Hebron Elementary School. And there's the
And I
budget.
see I was getting ahead of myself, 2022, not 2023, and we will correct that.
I think Donna's trying to do a biannual budget like the governor, so we could think about starting to do that, that would make it easier. So there's the budget. Donna's right, she'll change that date, but next is the budget review schedule. As list has those. I'm gonna make an announcement that I will not be available on March 8th, but my two trusted colleagues, Donna and Elaine, have promised me that they'll answer any questions. It's the night the two schools do their presentation, but I'm gonna be out of state. So I'll be back for the March 15th meetings. Just want to let everybody know.
I also will not be here March 8th. I got my continuing education that I have to do to maintain my licensing.
And I'm not going to be here on March 8th to try to continue my marriage. Information and comments, the selectmen have established an email address for budget comments, and I stated earlier, hebronbudct.com. Comments will be forwarded to the Board of Selectmen, Boards of Finance, and Boards of Education. The budget information is available in the town clerk's office, the Douglas Library, and also at our website at https://hebronct./budget-information/. We want to hear from you. And that's the town manager's proposed budget presentation per the charter.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Almost 9 o'clock. 7, not bad.
Anybody have any questions or? Okay, are we opening it up for public comment?
Go back to the agenda.
Which I,
Donna's putting it up.
okay. Oh, we have open space, land act?
Donna, do you have the agenda?
I do. Hang on one second. Let me just get,
Once again, virtual meetings.
the next agenda item is the open space land app presentation.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Good day, Brian.
Mr. Chair, everybody, good evening. Nice to be with you all. Thank you for the opportunity. Hope everybody is well. I've got some of my colleagues here watching in, and feel free to chime in if I miss something. I'm going to be talking about our OSLAC presentation for this year. And one of the reasons, as we've seen through not only the challenge we've had the last couple of years, what this group has done over the last couple decades has provided Hebron not only a quality open space, fresh water, place to recreate. It maintains property values going by budget. It provides stability, and it provides a reason during these challenging times why people want to move here, why we want to live here. So that's my preface. Thanks, Donna, for taking care of this for me. And we can move on. Next one. All right, so for those of you scoring at home, this committee was done by ordinance in '98, and you can read the rest of it. The original wording in the ordinance says, up to, the town can fund up to $500,000. And earlier in the meeting, I was quite surprised to see what a mill was actually worth nowadays. So that number has grown drastically. And open space, as you're going to see throughout the presentation, are accomplishments with what monies we've been given by the town to take care of the community for the long term. You'll see the benefits that we've done. All right, next, please. So we've got 7 members. You got 3 at large: Jim Cordier, John Mulaney, myself. We've got your colleagues. We have Dave and Tiffany, BOS respectfully. We've got Frank Zitkus on the meeting with Planning and Zoning, Kate from Park and Rec, and over on Conservation. Next. So we have 3 main categories that we work on: agriculture, resource, and rec. That's okay. That's fine, Don. I've got it down kind of now. Agriculture. So obviously people say, yeah, Hebron's a somewhat of a rural community. It's farming, etc. Well, how that folds into our bailiwick is, well, we've got active farms. We have farming years ago, and potentially new for farming, depending on where the community goes over the next, century. So that is a focus for us there, to preserve that type of land. Next. Resource protection. If you've heard me talk before, I talk about water. Water quality is where you see it out west. It's a huge issue. Something that we are blessed with here in Hebron. We have very high quality water. And that comes because we have great zoning laws. We have a good, group of people that work to protect that type of a resource. The other, forest and natural vistas. So next, recreation. There's your Burnt Hill Park, jewel of Connecticut and probably part of New England. Passive recreation, active recreation, we cover all of it. if there's a need identified by the community that this is something we should focus on, we would know where to look in the community. Next, please. All right, next. So we have some guidelines. We focus with the plan of C&D, which is currently underway and being revisited again every 5 years by planning and zoning on a volunteer basis, which again, I always promote saves the town quite a bit of money, probably over 100 grand. We work with the state, their conservation and development. We try to promote, and you're going to see in a couple slides, larger blocks of land so that we're not just picking up a piece of property that's isolated. It's serving a purpose. And Connecticut, as you've seen probably recently a few years ago with the land abutting Gay City, we're working with the state of Connecticut. I know Andy's been on, I think maybe Frank, meetings. We're talking about the Salmon River Forest and the trails down there. So we have a very good working relationship with the state, something I pride ourselves on, because when things come about here, we can talk to them to give them a heads up as to what's going on at the state level, whether it be for funding or things that they're looking to do with regards to preservation. Next, any questions, just holler, please. This is my jokingly the squiggly line map. Occasionally, back in the day when we were in person, it's tacked up on a wall somewhere in the downstairs room. But this is the area that we look to focus on. It looks to be a large amount of land, and we every handful of years, like you do the conservation and development plan. So these are corridors. These are things that we want to focus on because they have a benefit for a certain reason, whether it's one of the three that we just discussed. That's pretty much it there, Donna. So again, I mentioned a minute ago, so contiguous properties, bringing things together. This is actually the Burnt Hill Park land that we picked up down there to try to promote. And then when you do pick up a piece of property, for whatever reason it is, then you're looking, it's within those maps, what's surrounding it and where are we in regards to achieving what we're trying to achieve with that particular area specifically. Is there another piece of property abutting it that, you know, maybe the landowner talk to us or we'll be proactive in doing such. So we're working to bring big blocks of land together or build onto, as we did state park a couple years ago. All right, next, please. We're going to promote multiple uses. We have a trail system that we've got throughout the community, but it's protecting a vista, protecting trails that run along stream beds. So we want to have multiple uses in as many of the parcels that we have. In some, it's just going to be really protecting the land just as it is. In others, there may be some more of an active quote to that particular property. Next, please. Here are some of the things that we do with our partners at the state. We've probably done or offered to do all of them over the years, and we do the same with regards to working with different town departments here. If we're looking at, or the town is looking at a particular piece of property for whatever the reason may be, is there an open space component that should be dovetailed with it? Next, please. So again, this is going back to my Gay City State Park that we picked up, I think about 200 acres on both sides of Route 85 about 3 years ago now. And it was just something that we were watching, right? And make a phone call, and it ended up happening. It worked out to preserve the land. I think that land would have been probably could have been a pretty large subdivision, given It was access on a main highway just outside, or they had just built the one up at the old quarry, going for, huge amounts of money. This would have been probably 40% less to build a house and, 2 miles down up and over the hill. So this was a great win. It abuts Skay City. It protects a lot of land on both sides of the road. The one on the east side of the street is actually being farmed, and so it can stay in that world, promoting both protecting open space on one side of the street next to the park, and the other side is you're protecting farming land. All right, next, please. No, I'm not going to read all this, but I'll let you take a peruse through it. We've got the Brooks West Fawn. There's some just super high quality. I also work with the Salmon River Watershed Compact for Hebron to that group. There's 12 towns in your Salmon River watershed. And Hebron is looked at, I'll just toot the whistle for us, because we are proactive. We have been doing this for quite a number of years, as I said, since '98. But our bylaws, the things that we do with regards to zoning and how we all work together, and the preservation of land and how we go about it is top notch. People just can't believe what we have achieved here in Hebron, and everybody, even some of the certain towns, like a Glastonbury and whatnot, they wish they could do what we're doing. But if we do it now and we do it proactively, little by little, the envelope system where we're putting money aside every year for the chance that something might come down the pike that we've been looking at for a decade or so, we have the ability and not go out and try to bond or whatever we have to do if we didn't have the resources that we have. So thank you for what you've done and our predecessors have done, because it means a lot. I know I thought about it listening to your meeting tonight, and I've been there. You're going to be a grueling 6 weeks to get a budget passed. And then you look at this. When I look at open space, I've said, it's the most fun, because we're crafting, you're banging your head for small dollars sometimes, try to save money. But what you save by adding to open space is there for not only us, but for our kids or their generation and the next generation and so on. You're crafting what Hebron's going to look like. So I hope you had a chance to read that slide. So farmland preservation, water course quality, et cetera. We're always looking, I mentioned it a minute ago, existing open space and abutting properties. Abutting to the town, abutting to the airline trail, as we just did, the Bernstein property, an expansion there of 218 acres, thereabouts. I think I quoted that right. And the airline trail, what a gem. Throughout this whole pandemic, when people were cooped up, the parking lots were packed, and people had a chance to get out and just get some exercise, a little bit of normalcy for their hectic lives. What we're doing here, it makes a lot of sense. Gateway scenic parcels. So when you drive into Hebron, you're coming down 94 out of Glastonbury, up and over the hill, and then down into near the Foot Farms. It's beautiful land there, and you wouldn't want to see that really change. That's what I mean by a scenic vista. There's a number of them around Hebron, and it just doesn't. Ned Ellis says, if it's gone, it's gone. So we want to try to do our best to preserve frugally what we can, so that not only us, but our future generations that live here in Hebron have the same beautiful vistas and great water quality that and recreation that we're entitled to now, because we put money aside for this. Next. Here's some of the accomplishments of the group. Going back, the last one, Bernstein was just added in the last year. We've got 940 acres. Right. Next. The state has also picked up different properties. Going back to the last ones I've referred to a few times, east and west, they're abutting the Gay City State Park. So we've got just under 500 acres there with the state. Next, please. All right. So going back, development rights. That's another thing. Mike Porter, he just a few years back, I think he met with Mike, Andy, myself. He went out and he wanted to preserve. Open Space had looked at the property, but Mike took it upon himself. He said, everything's done with my farm for the family. And he went out and worked with the state and preserved 193 of his acres. Mr. Ellis has been doing the same thing for years. He's a extremely favorable open space individual, and always says we're not getting enough. But I say we do what we can do, and we applaud what he's done, because he's carrying on. It's a tough life both of those individuals have and their families. The way some of our earliest accomplishments as well. So next. All right, so that's here's the scorecard, if you will. We also picked up 220 acres about 12, 15 years ago from the Mohegan Land Trust when they were dissolving, and the town picked up that property to preserve it. So that's a great scorecard right there. Everybody here should be, and Hebron looks the way it does because of what we're doing, what you've done, and allocating some money each year just to get done what we've got in front of us. Next, please. Here's your a different way to look at it, percentages. Somebody always asks, and I can't do it off the top of my head, so here it is. Let's see, preserved agriculture, that's really the farms. State of Connecticut, as we bring our acreage, the state of Connecticut number is much larger because you have the Salmon River Forest in Gay City. And private open space, that would be your golf courses, cemeteries and stuff like that. Easter seals, camp hablocks. All right, thank you. Next. So here's how we look at it a different way. And I tried to get more current numbers, but I just didn't have the time. When you build and as a community, that Hebron is a desired place to be, it costs more to have development than you actually bring in tax revenue. That's just a fact. So the next slide says, if you've got open space or very low impact open space planning, it costs a lot less than the tax dollars that you actually bring in. Next slide, Donna. So it might cost you about 35 cents thereabouts for every tax dollar that you actually bring in revenue. So it does make sense. And through these times, going back to maintaining property values, quality of life, why we live here, what we want for our future generations, and just to go out and take a walk or get the kids on a field, have a good time, and do things that are healthy for them, body and soul. That's what open space is. So that's pretty much, I've gone through these ad nauseum, and I normally use the adage when I'm in person. I think it has more effect. I always tell people, if you close your eyes for a second and I say open space, and I say, what, you saw something, everybody saw something, and it's probably different for every single individual. These are some of the things of those benefits. It could have been a stone wall or a field or the waterfalls at Gay City, or at Grayville Falls, or whatever it may be. That's Hebron, and we should all be extremely proud of what we have and where we live. Next slide, please. We'll be wrapping it up here in a minute. This is since inception to date. So here's town contributions over the years, grants, some fees, donations, etc. I don't think we get investment earnings anymore. That stopped more than a dozen years ago, probably, unless it's nominal. You don't have to jump in on that, but it's probably nominal, if anything. So we help with surveys, appraisals. We've done it on all the recent purchases. And because we have the money, because everybody has been so, thinking long-term, this group and the voters for approving the money, we have the capability to do what we're doing. And personally, I thank you for that. Next, please. All right. So this is what we do. We meet every couple months or more if need be. We're working with landowners now. Things come up, and we may be going on a property walk. So the fact that we have the capability, we've got the contacts at the state or through the Salmon River Watershed Partnership, or just with each other, with different planners in Marlboro here. I mean, property borders or just a border. If we've got property in between us, it's all important to preserve large blocks of land. So this is what we do. We're always looking for growth. A lot of times we don't have much heads up, but that's just the nature of the beast. But we will try to be as frugal and as prudent to protect the taxpayer dollars as possible, and keep doing what we do. So next. Thank you all again from the bottom of my heart. And I know our committee, I don't know if anybody on the committee would like to say anything. Please feel free, Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow them.
Please.
Yeah, I like to speak. This is Frank Sitkis, and hello, everybody. And just first of all, wanted to thank the Selectmen and the Board of Finance and Andy for the continued support for Open Space Fund. When I go out to our open spaces, which I've been out there quite a bit lately, I cannot overstate the public comments as far as favorable ones, as far as for us to acquire open space. We got such very nice open space property, and we're always getting positive feedback at the Hebron event there at the Hebron Day, and also at the Maple Fest, and also very positive feedback on our open space articles that we publish in the Hebron Views. So one thing that's on the benefits of open space that was not on the list that we just saw here on the PowerPoint is one of them is recognized by the state as evidenced by their last grant award. They have indicated that factor in providing an award of open space to the town is the climate change mitigation that our forests and wetlands do for us. So as you probably are aware of, forests and wetlands sequester and store a lot of carbon, and now the state of Connecticut is making that a high priority from when we receive a grant award. That's one of the aspects that they're looking for. As far as also, I think the town, our beautiful active recreational facilities and our open space properties and the historical assets that we have, perhaps Hebron could be promoting these assets a little bit more to, obviously to our residents that we currently have here in town, and also to attract some visitors. So I think that effort is going to be, being enhanced in the near future. There's people working on identifying, but are actually on every one of our open space properties. We do have trails or paths on them, all of them right now, and they're being mapped out and marked out, and soon, hopefully, they'll be on the town website for everybody to see, because there's so many beautiful properties we have and people may not know about them. So we are active in trying to get those out there to people to identify them. And just as far as our open space balance, that balance that was just shown on there, that includes a pending $200,000 grant from the state for the Bernstein property. So right now, as far as actual cash goes, Elaine probably has a more up-to-date number, but I think we're around the $65,000 range at the moment. And obviously, we do appreciate Andy's recommendation to add 175 to the fund, which, because we do have a few properties that we're contemplating acquiring. A couple of them are close to happening, hopefully. And we've actually reached out to a landowner and some trails too. And also, there's another very large property that we have just asked staff to contact the owner on that one as well, because that one has got a very high natural resource protection value and a potential, financial impact, a positive one for the town. And so anyways, there's quite a few properties that we're looking at, and obviously we will need to have funding to secure those important properties. And do appreciate all the support that we're getting. And again, I think the public is very behind this initiative. And yeah, so anyways, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Anyone
Chairman,
else?
if I may, I had a few
Yes.
comments.
Yes, please,
Yes,
sir.
I'm Jim Cordier, 48 Charles Lane. I've served as one of the founding members of the Open Space and Land Acquisition Committee. I know most of you guys, years we've done committee service together. And I really want to reinforce our committee's appreciation for the hard work that you two respective boards have done over the years in maintaining this fund. And we really realized and appreciate the fact that we're about one slice of a larger pie as well. And we're grateful that we're considered in the balance of things. A few bullet points, if I may. The average contribution since the program's inception in 1998 has been about $181,000. The properties that were heretofore referenced are many, some of which will link and accommodate our Kinney, Millstream, Gilead Elementary School properties and trail systems in our efforts. It's linkages with the business/town center district area. And this has been one of our goals for the longest time, for a couple of decades. And so I would attest that if a large property did become available, it would be nice to have the wherewithal to act. And so we've been mindful over the years of other means of revenue generation, such as Glastonbury and other towns here in Eastern Connecticut. And they've used bond issuance as a means of generating dollars for their acquisitions. And Hebron really doesn't have the tax base or the funds to follow that path. And like Brian had indicated, the cookie jar methodology has worked very well with us, particularly when we leveraged what dollars that the town has set aside with state dollars. And it's worked beautifully, again, thanks to your support and your hard work. We wouldn't want to upset our Moody's rating either by adding to the town's bonding indebtedness, as it were. We generate revenue, and I don't think that was mentioned tonight. Over the years, in addition to the acquisitions made by the town, either with their own funds or can leverage dollars, OSLAC has helped facilitate the state purchase of large tracts of Hebron's farms and forest over the years for state park expansion and the preservation of our farming community. The town has generated approximately $1.2 million in revenue through 7 state grants over the years, fees in lieu of open space, donations, and fund investments. So this has been good all around. Now is the time to be bold. I think the public support and the political will to fund this program has never been stronger. Since the advent of COVID, the use and appreciation for our public lands has increased exponentially, as Frank and as Brian had just indicated. You couldn't fit a dime in some of these parking lots by the airline trail on certain days. And I've seen some of the exchange on Facebook as well, thanking the town for the preservation of these lands and our rural aura, as it were. Hebron's fields and our forests and our farmland, our parks, our open spaces, and our rural community qualities are what people came here for, as was mentioned. And this is strongly evidenced by the recent housing survey that was taken. So again, we express our profound for your work and for making Hebron a place to come to and stay at and raise your kids and enjoy one of the best educational systems in the state. And thank you again for everything you guys do.
Welcome. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay, I do. One of the things, and I'm not sure if it's open space that gets involved in this or whatever, the forestry plan that was at one point discussed a couple of years back, talking with the forestry plan with offsetting revenues. And, the other thing, I'm not sure again, if whose area, whose bailiwick would be forestry practices, which to help to improve the carrying capacity of the land for wildlife, because that's one of the great things when we talk about these core wildlife protection, increasing wildlife types, varieties, and of course, then, that comes the carrying capacity of the land. So I don't know if you wanted to discuss anything on that line.
This is Frank. I can comment on that if Brian, after Brian.
Yeah, I'll briefly touch on what I've talked with. I know the town manager, planning director has brought forth some recommendations. And throughout COVID, I don't think we've really addressed them. At least I don't believe we have. We're going to bring that back up again. I have been on some meetings with the state and basically reading through the state's forest management plan. And to your point of for wildlife, it says, they would prefer younger forests. We've got, I think to Frank's point a little while ago, carbon sequestration and how does that work? And certain areas of forest you just don't want to touch. So if you really want to, get your fingers dirty, pardon the pun, the state forest management plan is a good place to start. And I think we'll be powwowing back again with the town manager to address some of those issues.
Great, thank you.
All right, I'd like to make some comments on this issue. Now, first of all, actually, when you look at open space care, we should be doing a natural stewardship plan, as opposed to, first of all, does anyone want to tell me what sustainable forest management is? I mean, people they can say what they want about that, but that is sort of a misnomer. And really what we should be doing is looking at a stewardship plan for the town of Hebron. And essentially that should have been coming forth from the Conservation Commission, because their statutory charge is to identify town open space and their uses. So that's a statutory charge that they have. So that committee should have been the one that initiated this process in coordination with the Parks and Rec Department. But really, that's their is to come up with this recommendation. But in any case, as far as the stewardship plans, there's lots of entities to go and seek advice on that, including the Northeast Wilderness Trust, the Heisted Foundation, and then you can go on and look at other entities as well. But those couple of them, and actually the Harvard Forest, because they're looking at the forest health, the benefit for the forest health, as opposed to forester plans, which really their goal is to have a sustainable forest harvest. And that is not good for the forest health. No matter what people have been saying about this matter, the forests, if they're left to go to old forest status, that is what that's the best thing for the forest, is for their health. Because it's been shown by the National Forest Association and all kinds of scientific studies, psychologists, that old growth forest management properties, ones that are not actively managed, have the least amount of invasive species in them. They're the most resilient to natural occurrences, which include fires and soil erosion and drought and all kinds of other things and pests, because old forests have more biodiversity in them. They have more species, wildlife species, more tree species, and that results in a higher amount of resilience. And as I mentioned earlier, old growth forests are the ones that sequester and store the most carbon of any kind of property. And of course, the forests do include wetland systems as well. But lands that are managed obviously that's the opposite. Everything that has been stated by, for instance, if you look on the DEP website, they are more or less advocating for, sustainable timber practice towards the private landowner. If a private landowner, of course, wants to do that, well, they're free to do that kind of thing. But on public land, the goal should be the forest health. And the forest health is best served by essentially having a stewardship plan that's natural and essentially is a hands-off sort of thing where you may want to do some active management on these properties that we actually own, but that basically it involves removing the invasive species that are on them already. And those invasive species, as they have been disturbed in the past. So if you disturb a intact forest that does not have invasive species on them, you are opening it up to a invasive species barrage. So that is a very high risk to do that. And this is very evidenced by the property that we bought as open space. It's a fish property that we bought in 2017. And Brian and the rest of the committee walked this property last year. We bought the property in 2017. It was forested in 2016. We went out there last year after my wife and I took a walk on it, and that place has exploded with invasive species so badly that you can't even walk in there. So because it was timbered. You open up the forest, these days invasive species go right in there and they take over the whole landscape. They change the complexity of the soil, native species can't grow, wildlife disappears, you get ticks come in there because barberry is growing all over the forest. So it's a very, there's adverse impacts of doing active management on properties that are natural and don't have disturbances. But these factors are never talked about by DEP, and any forester will not go into these issues. For some reason, because their goal is to have a sustainable income for the landowner. But that's not why the people bought their open space. We bought them to be protected, pieces as natural as possible, and for their health. And so this is why you go to a forest ecologist or an entity that does a natural stewardship plan, and that's how you protect your open space. You don't go to a forester because that forester is not interested in that. They are interested in making a little bit of money from timber. And Connecticut is on the very high target list right now for timbering. If you go around, actually, I've been attending a lot of state webinars and so forth about this issue because a lot of people are very upset what the state of Connecticut is doing to their open spaces, the DEP basically. They are allowing a lot of timber contracts to go out, and they're timbering all over the place, the state parks, the state forests, the wildlife management areas, and people are very upset about this because they're doing this without public notice. Their reasonings for it are antiquated. They're not accurate. They're scientifically, they're doing this, and now the state of Connecticut now has got a bill out there, Senate Bill 117. They're going to try to make this DEP stop what they're doing, their procedures. They're going to make them get an arborist, hopefully an arborist that looks at tree risk assessment sort of things. So anyways, there's a movement by the state legislature and also the Council on Environmental Quality to look at what DEP is doing. And so to go to DEP for advice on how to handle our open space properties is a wrong one. So we really need to go through the Conservation Commission, ask them how they want to proceed, but it's really, they should be seeking out a consultant that is involved with natural stewardship. Essentially, it's a hands-off sort of thing. So to say that you want to make the forest healthy by going in there and timbering is totally not, that's not the case. You cannot do that. If you do, you're going to introduce invasive species onto the property and you can't get rid of them. You can kind of try to maintain them, but it's like an impossible thing. As soon as they get in there, it's all over. And by the way, there's a volunteer group that's coming up through. There's a Girl Scout project that was approved by Parks and Rec back in September. So we're going to try to get some volunteers to be trail rangers and so volunteers can kind of keep an eye on the open spaces and maybe do a little bit of open space as far as the invasive species, because the invasive species that are out on our properties, I've walked every one of these properties. And I know you guys probably know this already, but I know these properties probably better than anybody. I love these properties. I've been doing this for like over 20 years, and I know what's out there. And the issues that are out on our properties are all because of either old trails that are out there that have got invasive species on their edges, which now are creeping to the woods, or there's a field that's been opened up on a property, species in there. So if you do any kind of opening in an open space that's intact and not disturbed, you're going to invite all these things to come in there, and you can't get rid of them. It's all over. It's just so. Anyways, you got to be very, very careful about doing any kind of active management. And there is a part for this, perhaps, like for instance, on the Bernstein property, there's 4 fields along Old Colchester Road. Those fields are back in succession. They're slowly growing up with some shrubs and so forth. Of course, there's invasive species out there as well. It says fields, okay, well that's an active management portion. It's an active management thing you could do underneath the stewardship plan, because maybe you want to keep the fields as fields because it may have some, like Dan was pointing out, it may have some habitat pluses for certain types of wildlife. So in that case, there is an active management component to a natural stewardship plan. But generally, though, you don't want to go in there and disturb undisturbed property, because you're just going to cause all kinds of trouble. Bring in timber companies into the forest. You're compacting the soil. You're leaving a big mess all over the place. As evidence on the fish property, it's got logs and trash. I mean, the branches all over the place. You can't even walk on the trails anymore. So it's a very, you have to be very cognizant of what you're doing. And since I know the properties, our properties do not need maintenance. They have existing paths on them already. Maybe we can parking areas along the sides of the roads and so forth, so people can get in there and see them, but they don't need to have active management other than maybe doing a little bit of invasive species management. So anyways, and I've been studying this issue for like 20 months now. I've been very, very on top of this. I've been attending all kinds of, doing a lot of reading, going to different webinars about this. And if you ask the forest ecologists about this, they'll totally agree with what I'm saying. So I know there's a lot, this is what has to be thought of, as opposed to thinking about our forests as a resource for accessing money, because that is just going to destroy our forests. And actually, one of the state foresters that I saw at a meeting said that if you timber a state forest, you basically have taken away the functions of the forest. It's not a forest anymore. You've cleared out the underbrush, the understory trees are all gone, and you've compacted the soil. And like I said, the invasive species, and even the state of Connecticut even states that the money that they get from the timber contracts that they send out, they put it in a fund to go and manage invasive species, which just got created by what they just did. This makes no sense. So you got to stay out of the forests that are clean and healthy. Just leave them alone. So thank you for letting me comment.
I know Mel had a question. I think Andy, I saw your hand up. Yeah.
Talked about this tonight during the budget process. You can clearly see Frank's compassionate about the forest, which we all are. So just a couple clarifications to be quick and get off the subject for tonight. But the town planner at the time, Michael Leary, along with the Parks and Rec director at the time, Rich Calarco, who's in charge of maintaining the open space through working with the groups like the Open Space Land Acquisition, Brian's the chairman of. There's requirement to get state funding for some of these properties. One of them is you have to put in parking areas. You're supposed to have an access trail down through the center, as long as you're not, interfering with waterways or things like that. So I think it's 3 years in the making now. I think the intent was to make these properties more accessible for the public to use. They did engage a forester to go in there and look and see what was and stuff, but we've also worked with the Yale professor of forestry, who at times would agree with what Frank said. First off, I just want to clarify, the Way property is not anything the town would ever do or did we condone. That was done prior to purchase, so that's not a good example. That's the good example of what you shouldn't do, I agree, but I'm not here to debate or have an argument with the visions I hear today. I think we need to work together to come up with, satisfy what the state requirements are for these open space parcels that we use their monies for. There's a time-sensitive criteria with placarding, You have to have signage on it. You have to have decent access for parking and also trails through the woodlands. I think we were never looking to make a revenue generator. I think it was looking to be more of a revenue offset to the planner and the parks director at the time for some of those requirements for the state. Just the A2 surveys are very expensive. I think, don't quote me, but I think the Bernstein property was well within $30,000. I mean, that was the intent, to open them up for more passive recreation, not go in there and log or upset to the point where we would invite invasives. But the engineer of forestry, from Yale, who I'm friends with, and I don't have his name here at home with me. It's in my office with the plan. Kind of disagrees a little bit with Frank on some of the things. Doing nothing is not what he suggests. He thinks you should be able to do something, but do it responsibly. There are areas, like Frank said, that could be totally left alone for the carbon footprint. They're very keen on that, and that's a huge thing. But that could be worth some money for the town as well. If you designate that in a 10 to 20 perspective, you could possibly sell that carbon footprint and get some money that would go. Any money that we were proposing, once again, it wasn't a revenue generator. It was an offset to go back into the open space land acquisition. One, for maintenance and compliance with what the state requires when you use their funds. And two, to replenish or take some of the burden off the taxpayers to maintain the open space with gates, parking areas, signage, things. That was the intent. I think it needs to be revisited. I think we need to come in open-minded and look and agree upon both sides on what's best for the town, but nobody here that I know of, including myself, wants to go into timber or ruin the open space that we presently have.
All right, that's great to know, Andy. Thank you very much for that. Now, it's just one more quick comment, but our open spaces already have trails on them already. So as far as like making new ones, we did go for a National Hike Day back in November. And fortunately, Ken Jardin joined me, and we went out on the Hebron property. And because people on the Parks and Rec Commission, I'm not even sure if they even know about open spaces, what they actually are. But in any case, Ken joined us and very nicely saw all the open trails, all the trails out on that property, and says, "Well, we don't need to do anything here. There's the trails are here already. So we just need to mark out the parking spaces or along the side of the road there." So, but all of our open spaces ready. So that is, as far as being concerned with the state, that's really, they're either accessible with trails or there's trails along the property that you can get into the property at. But as far as you're saying, though, it's good to make the properties more identifiable and accessible with parking, of course.
Okay, Frank, I was going to say, let's try to kind of get it back. You were getting a little bit off here. So let's try to get it back into the budget aspects. Although this is definitely something I think we as a community need to further discuss. But not that, I don't think tonight's the night. Mel, did you want anything?
Yeah, as you talk about getting it back to the budget, that was what my question's about. I know in past years, there's been a lot of discussion on funding of maintaining this property. And I guess my question is there any special funding that we're providing to maintain this property? Is the funding adequate? Based on what I've heard, there are properties we haven't done a thing with. And I mean, we buy it, and I support open space. I was on the committee for several years. I think it's a great way to protect the natural. It's also a great way to maintain the ambiance of our town. But we also have to, there's a cost to owning that. Are we funding that today? Are we funding it adequately? If not, what do we need to do to fund it adequately? And I don't know who to ask the question of.
Well, the maintenance, Mal, if I may, Mr. Chair, the maintenance has been handed off to Park and Rec. So after we've made as an advisory committee to you guys, after we've done our job and the town has purchased it, Park and Rec would be facilitator of such.
Yes, I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware that the past Parks Director said he didn't have the manpower, he didn't have the dollars, he didn't have the time to do that. Has anything come out of that discussion?
I wouldn't mind making a quick comment again. Now, as far, again, the open spaces we have, the ones that are basically passive recreational areas or forests, they don't need maintenance. The maintenance is coming for, of course, on Burn Hill Park. That's a lot of maintenance is going on there because it's an active field. Now, you could eliminate some of the maintenance that's going on like on Rainbrook Preserve, because some of that maintenance that's going on out there is not really environmentally good thing to do. For instance, mowing up along the pond or going into fields that are wetlands and cutting them down, cutting the grass down there. That makes no sense at all to be doing that in the first place. So there could be some areas that I think could be actually less maintenance on the natural areas because it'll be better for the environment not to do some of that cutting. But generally, though, there's very little to do on these open space forests that don't need anything.
Several years ago, Frank, there was, I can remember Brian was on the board of Selectmen at that time. And part of the negotiations on the CIP is that dollars would be put into maintaining open space. And I'm certainly no expert, and I'm not here to debate what the proper way to maintain or not maintain them is. But I do believe to be dollars and manpower in order to do what needs to happen. Whether they're doing the wrong things, they're doing the right things, that's something for a different day. But, I'm just asking from a budget perspective. I know in the past we did not properly, or we did not have the resource to do whatever needed to be done. And my question is, has that changed?
Mal, I'll wrap it up. I believe, I don't know if you still do, about $10,000 was transferred away from the open space at one point over toward the Park and Rec budget. And for brush hogging and whatnot to, keep invasives from growing, et cetera.
Mr. Chairman? Yes,
Yes.
$10,000 went in a couple years back into the Parks and Recreation ground maintenance for some of that, Brian, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is it every year?
Yes,
Yeah, I
it's still in there now. It's still in the budget.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Chairman Larson, can we get back to the budget? This is getting way off track. This is something we need to discuss at a later date, but it's 9:45. Let's get back to the budget.
I agree. Okay. Well, I mean, it does evolve around dollars and cents, but it just knowing that there is money in there for that, we need to have a later discussion as to whether it's a proper amount or not. But okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yep. Appreciate all your time tonight, folks.
Okay. Next.
Donna, can you put the agenda back up, please?
The next item is miscellaneous government, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay. Again, Andy?
If that's something you want to go into, we can get into our books and look that up.
What do we think we're looking at for?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that long. Donna, which tab in the book is that? Does it say miscellaneous?
Well, usually we start right up front in the 1,000
We can do that.
series.
That's okay with me. Is that what the board wants to do?
Well, I'd like to try to wrap up after we're done, if we can.
All right, Elaine, I'll let you walk them through the budgets.
Okay, so the first tab in 1000 is the full-time payroll department. And this is all full-time employees. And it's an overall percentile increase of 3.17. And keep with some of the salary survey discoveries. We've tried to bring up a few employees and trying in an attempt to retain some of our staff as well. I've reported to the Board of Finance that we've lost several DPW employees to other municipalities that are paying much higher. So we did attempt to try and adjust a little bit of all of the full-time areas. So it's a 3.17 increase for that department. Is there any questions?
Nope. I think totally necessary.
Department one.
Gail, I've got to agree with that. In the last several years, I've seen some great employees leave the town employment because they would more money someplace else. So I totally agree with that.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, Department 1001 for the Selectmen, which is overall some administrative costs, meetings and conferences for the Selectmen as well as the town manager, dues, subscriptions and contractual services, most much flat funded. There was a few increases for the dues line, but that's a 0.61 overall departmental increase.
Mhm. Okay.
Department 1002. I'm trying to get to mine. This has a little of an increase to it. The overall department increase is a 12.63. We tried to budget where we needed actual increases. You'll notice the postage line has a $4,000 increase, and that was due to what our actual needs were based on the 2020-2021 fiscal year. So that was bumped up by $4,000. And office supplies, $1,000, because that was also being depleted and overdrawn in the last 2 years. So that's the net increase of $5,000 to that department.
And I could just comment on those increases. It's Donna. Office supplies, a lot of that is due to COVID supplies, PPE and sanitizer and things like that. And the postage increase mostly due to the Views magazine. We pay for the postage on those quarterly mailings.
Okay.
Okay, Department 1003, which is the attorney's department, that has an increase of $1,000 for supplemental attorney services, or 2.38%. And Department 1004, which is Central Computer Services. This has almost a 23% increase due to computer services needs, and I'll let Donna speak to that because she has most of the contact with Novus for our computer support.
Okay. It is for the move to Office 365. We have to buy licenses for the Office 365 per person. So that is the majority of it, but just keep in mind with that, that's an annual ongoing expense. But when we purchase new computers, we don't have to buy the Office. So the Office 365 is continually upgraded to the latest versions of the software. And there's also increases to the IT support, our managed support, our cloud services, a slight, I think, slight increase to the iVisions or the software we use for our accounts payable and a couple other adjustments in IT lines. Thank you.
Is this going to be an ongoing percent increase year after year, do you think? Or,
No, this is basically right sizing. This is where we should be. So last year we under budgeted. Well, we didn't budget enough because we did not know what the full expense would be. So this now and just be the, whatever the annual increase might be, which would be, minimal, maybe 3% for IT services. But we won't see this kind of increase every year.
okay. Thank you.
Elaine, before you go forward, I was muted. I tried to ask this earlier. What is the difference between services and supplemental attorney services?
Supplemental attorney services is usually for the labor negotiations for union contracts.
Okay. Thank you.
Department 1005 for historic properties. That's an increase of $105 for actual expense in the fiscal year 2021 year again, as opposed to what was in the adopted budget for the current year. Department 1010, town buildings. This is mostly building maintenance. This is also building maintenance for the senior center as well. There's a substantial increase of $51,000 to this department. And my Board of Finance remembers I've been reporting all year long about a deficit for building maintenance where we didn't budget appropriately. You can see the difference between what the final expense was in 2021 and 21-22. We missed while we were in the budget process. We didn't have some of the estimated costs for different things that we were going to need for building maintenance. And in the budget process, we didn't update it. So we brought this back in line to where it really needs to be for the fiscal year.
Okay. Can we go back? The Tricentennial Commission, is that still in effect?
Chairman Larson, that's really the historic properties. It's just, it's a carryover, and some of those titles, we don't have the ability to change. So it is the Historic Properties Commission, and it pays for a publication and a website for them.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Can I just go back again on the heating fuel? Everything going on in the world, do we need to consider bumping that up? I mean, gas has gone up literally 20-something cents just within a matter of days. I don't have any answers. I just know that those kinds of increases, I'm just curious whether or not are we budgeting enough for that heating fuel and for fuel in general.
well, for our budgetary purposes, we normally just take the last 12 months of actuals and then add like a 3% increase to it. I mean, everything's an estimate when you're budgeting. So
Okay. Just as I say, I'm just concerned. You know, Thank you.
And in capital outlay, there's an increase of $7,000, and that's for some painting at the senior center.
Okay.
The next department, 1020, is office, and our contract is for the total is $58,000. The town pays $45,000, and the rest is absorbed by the Board of Education. So that's up $1,000. Department 1030, we don't really have any kind of bank fees. Most of our fees are absorbed through our balances that we maintain in Webster Bank. So there isn't really any true bank fees that are affiliated. So I took that out, excuse me, and everything else was pretty much flat funded. So there's a slight decrease to that department budget. Department 1040 for the tax collector's office has a 2% increase in quality data software and a bump that's being incurred there. And she also bumped up her special forms and supplies a bit. Department 1050 for the assessor is the same thing. Most of her increase is due to some subscription costs increases, and again, the quality data software that she utilizes as well.
Okay.
Our next department is the town clerk, 1060. She has an increase of $10,000 to our land records. They wish to change their vendor, so there's an increase of $10,000 to her budget.
Okay.
And registrar of voters, pretty much flat funded most of their budget. The only increase is just a 3% increase to the part-time payroll line for the registrars and deputy registrars. And that concludes the Department 1000s. And the next one would be going into the police budget.
I think at this point, it's 9:59. That gets just about 10 o'clock. If people don't mind, I think call it the night. Do a public comment and close the evening. That sound okay?
Yes, it
Thank
does.
you.
Good. Just one
Very
thing,
good, Jan.
Chairman Larston, if there's any department heads that you would like to see come before the boards for budget reviews other than the ones we have scheduled, if you could let us know that. Right now, we have the Public Works, Fire Department, and Parks. But if there's anyone else that you think, if you could let us know so that we can schedule that into one of the meetings.
Okay. What I would ask is if everyone would respond to their chair, that way it's only one person going to the town with the requests rather than every member going directly to staff. Does that sound fair?
And it doesn't mean if they're not here, we're gonna skip over them. We should be able to answer a lot of questions for all the departments. But if there's a specific department you really want to hear from the department head, we won't exclude that. We'll bring them in.
Oh, okay. So they say, or Diane, and we'll get it to the town staff and, go from there. Anybody have any other questions, comments before we move on? Okay, hearing none. Do we have anyone for public comment?
Nothing indicated in the chat, and I think everybody here is from the boards.
Okay,
Last call for public comment. I think we're all set.
thank you very much, everyone. I know it turned in long, but thank you. And again, very informative, very good meeting. And as I say, I will not be there next Tuesday. So my vice chair will have to handle the board of selectmen responsibilities.
Board of Finance, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you,
And-
Michael.
And I'll
Gail?
make a motion for us to adjourn at 10:02.
Okay, and thank you, everybody, Andy, Donna, Elaine, for putting in the hours too. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
night.
night. Thank you.